Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, July 27th, and let's see, what do I need to do to kind of start here? These daily missions that are win 3 ranked matches or unranked matches or arena matches don't work because A, I don't have time to do them, and B, they give you temporary gyms, which seem to be fairly useless. I've had this box clicked for solo missions, which then kind of eliminates the odds of you having any stacking missions. So, as I'm still working through the solo main story, I guess I'll continue to get solo missions, but very quickly I will be done with that. Not amazingly quickly. I managed to do all of chapter 1 except for actually doing the battles of chapter 1, which is why it says 7 of 8, and then looking at the story. It's a very weird series I'm doing where I'm basically just criticizing the story and not really criticizing the gameplay because I'm playing the game off screen. There is also this practice mode where you get a reward for taking on each of the leaders on multiple levels of difficulty, and I'm not sure I'm actually going to be able to pull all of that off at my level of understanding of this game. And there's achievements around all of that, but I think fairly quickly you're going to get all of the achievements, and then that's just going to be it. You're not going to have any more ways to really earn a lot of gold, which means you're not going to have a lot of ways to open a lot of packs, which means you're not going to have a lot of ways to pull off progress. As this game is just barely 4 years old, there is some problems definitely with that idea. So I guess that means I can just kind of play as whatever I want, so we'll just hop in here. As for the accountability section, I still haven't gotten around to uploading and scheduling any videos. I just hate it so much that I put it off. If there's any way I can put it off, I put it off. To the point where I know that the remaining Magic the Gathering videos have not been airing on the weekends, and I don't know if I even care about that because nobody's really watching those. And inherently that is the problem with my YouTube channel and the way YouTube treats channels in a nutshell, is that you cannot do what you want to do. You have to have massive viral video and then another massive viral video and then a massive viral video over and over again. You can't do like a TV channel, which TV channels like ABC, CBS, NBC, channels like that. I mean, they've got basically nothing on Saturday nights and Friday nights, and that's it. They put something out there, they get a few views, but it's basically nothing, and people know that. If YouTube was in charge of the ratings board, they would be severely penalizing everybody for every bad show, every rerun, every terrible movie that they put on during their prime time. So when I want to put out like pre-recorded footage of a game that's more niche, or just pre-recorded footage of any game, it gets no views, and then the fact that it gets no views, I think, then inherently demotivates the algorithm to suggest the next live stream. And the only way to fix that would be to just be like so many other YouTube channels and just obsessed about doing whatever live stream card game I was doing and burning myself out playing only one game at all. But yeah, the YouTube sucks. We all know it. There still is not really an alternative to it, although it would be nice if there was. Twitch has just gotten worse and worse in the past, I'd say, year and a half compared to even what it was. So it is a ridiculous joke to even think about moving over to Twitch at this point. Most recent controversy, and I don't know if perhaps there is a bit more to the story than what I've heard, but Twitch staff apparently saw fit to suspend someone who was streaming The Last of Us 2 because they had the gall to say, I don't want to look at this transgendered person anymore, talking about one of the characters in The Last of Us 2, not talking about an actual human. And perhaps she was talking about Abby, I think, who isn't actually a transgendered person, which, okay, mislabeling someone apparently is now a bannable offense on Twitch. And that there is maybe some more under the controversy of that, in the fact that they effectively had a face model and I think a separate voice actor and a separate body model to make Abby's appearance. So they mix and match something to the point where it might have been more relatable and understandable had they used the face model of the person that they scanned the body for. And they definitely at some point did intentionally add more muscle tone to Abby as a character compared to what the original trailers were when it was first teased. And I wouldn't say her appearance is unrealistic, it's just unconventional, I guess is the best way to put it. But yeah, I've been just playing Shadowverse. There's not really anything more I can do. It has been weird, certainly, as my insomnia and the summer have just conspired together to have me wake up and play for like an hour of pre-recorded footage of Shadowverse in the story part, and then I have to play for 2 or 3 hours to actually get the battles done off screen, and then I probably at that point fall asleep for a 4-hour nap or 4 to 6 hour nap, and it's at that point that
no one gets past me.
I then wake up and do one more recording. So I'm getting like 2 or 3 recordings a day, or in a 24-hour period, just because of this weird sleep schedule. And I have no idea how to fix that, or even begin to fix that. There's really nothing else I can play or nothing else I can do, and I only have about 26 more hours worth of recording space, so I really need to schedule and upload videos, and I don't have a really great time to do that. Also, I would say that there's absolutely nothing on TV. I went and looked at the YouTube trending page, and I haven't looked at that in probably 4 or 5 months, and it's still the exact same garbage as before, if not worse. Actually, I think it's worse. And then I looked at the gaming tab, the subsidiary of that, and and that too was just awful. Same Roblox stuff, same Minecraft stuff, same people pretty much. There's just been no growth as far as their trending recommendations. Which, in all fairness, they should have just said, you know what, we're going to just not use the trending tab. Considering. And the algorithm on YouTube has been really terrible lately, where it's straight up suggesting makeup tutorials to me and Korean pop songs. It's just run out of anything interesting at all to recommend to me, because there's just so much on its list, it seems, that it refuses to recommend. Because, yeah, it should know what I like. Mostly it's nerd stuff, programming videos, ESP32, Arduino programming stuff, real nerd stuff, or video game stuff, or anime stuff. And the fact that just none of that nerd stuff at all, and I'll just generally put it as nerd stuff, is in the group of things they want to promote. It's just defaulting to things I would never watch, like rap music videos. Never in a million years. Korean K-pop. Never in a million years. Makeup tutorials. Never in a million years. And even when it does recommend me something that I want to see, it's recommending me videos that I've already seen. And I've just put in an extra bit of effort to try and just tell it to stop recommending this garbage. Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of losses. That's pretty much it. We're just gonna get a lot of losses until I can figure out what deck I even like to play. Did find out that there's a small bit of censorship in the Shadowverse, like her cleavage is in the Japanese version more exposed, but that's about it. It seems like half a dozen cards, or maybe a dozen cards, are slightly changed. But there, you can also kind of tell in the voices of the new cards that they have not bothered to do any kind of localization and have the characters say anything in English. So a lot of the new cards will just say something in Japanese, like hit him. Whereas if you have a basic card, they tend to have an English voice to it. So it's kind of funny, the game starts off asking you whether you want English voices or not, and it really only means in the single player mode, really. Was there something else worth mentioning? I know there's a few things that kind of have been talked about, but may not remember them enough to actually mention them. So, I think we are I think we're just gonna go through the news and try to have a standard shorter experience, which just seems like that is the thing that is just gonna keep on happening. See, this is a spell boost, which will summon more snowmen. At least over the weekend, there's not been any major controversy that I recall. Seems like the Ubisoft stories have gone as far as they can go, which is to say they probably could go further, but there's kind of a lack of anything new to say. Let's see. This is a crazy deck. There's kind of nothing here. So let's just cover the news. For the PC and PS5, a game called Project Athea is an open world game according to the Square Enix's presidents. They said, quote, "We'll never stop developing for high-end platforms such as the PlayStation 5. Which is quite a commitment, frankly. Although, in the end, it's a pretty easy to wiggle out of statement in the sense that the real response here is that they will never just fall down to making mobile games or Switch games, which arguably you could even say the Switch might fall under the category of high-end platforms compared to mobile games. Let's see. Summon clay golems. 5 snowmen are the maximum you can summon anyways. I could evolve that to a 3 and attack, but I don't know if that helps anything. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Tell me why that game that I took as like there was some form of abuse in one of these two characters' past and they didn't remember it and that they were trying to find out what happened. I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. I may have interpreted a lot more there than actually was shown in that brief trailer. But oddly it has this FAQ that clarifies game's depiction of trans and indigenous characters, which I don't know why this is even a thing. I didn't even see any trans or indigenous characters per se. I mean, I guess this could be a Native American, or both of them could be, but Tyler apparently is transgender, and the depiction of Tlingit characters and culture. The Tlingit tribe resides in Alaska, where the game is set. Okay. Yeah, I imagine there is often many cases of some poor treatment of indigenous characters in Alaska in the real world, even from other indigenous characters. But you know, I don't know what else to really say about that. Frankly, it just seems very odd and premature. And this is from Don't Nod, which, if I am recalling correctly, Don't Nod is who? Projects by Don't Nod. Aren't they the creator of Life is Strange?
You like the cold?
Man, their website is just garbage. Yeah, Life is Strange 2, Tell Me Why, Twin Mirror, Captain Spirit, Vampire, Life is Strange 1, Remember Me. Alright. So I remember playing Remember Me, and well, that story was kind of fine. There really wasn't a lot to it. The gameplay was terrible. I remember playing Life is Strange, and well, the story started off good, and the gameplay mechanics started off good. By the second or third chapter, it had gone completely off the rails, and it was poorly written and was unrelatable, frankly. And then Vampire, from what I hear, wasn't that good. Captain Spirit was alright, but not that great. Twin Mirror, I don't think it's come out yet. And then Life is Strange 2, not a ton of people singing its praises.
This one's for my family.
So it seems to me, and this is basically the same criticism I had when I was playing Life is Strange also, is that the Don't Line team is more interested in kind of pushing a narrative that they don't really have a good grasp or an understanding of, and thus it doesn't come off as realistic or relatable. Very often when playing Life is Strange, it felt like it was two Canadian guys telling a story of a teenage girl in mid-America. So now with Tell Me Why, it seems like it's going to be two Canadian grown men telling a story of people in Alaska. So I would not really hold my breath for Tell Me Why, and if anything, it seems like Don't Nod has just gone deeper and deeper down the SJW and identity politics range, that this is their first focus and their most important thing to put out first in an FAQ, when frankly you probably would, even if you are gonna push identity politics like crazy, you probably would be better off leaving all of that to be discovered when the game actually sells, instead of announcing it so far ahead. Because the problem with SJWs is that they eat their own, and so for instance, Deadly Premonition 2, the Swery, the creator of Deadly Premonition 2, tried to do something from a Japanese perspective that was very pro-transgendered, and he didn't do it the way SJWs liked it. He said, okay, I've heard your criticism, I'll learn from this and I'll fix it and I'll re-edit the game and I'll change it. I mean, he completely agreed to do everything you would think that a reasonable person would want them to do if you truly felt that he had just kind of misconstrued the transgender character. And it didn't change a darn thing. People still attack him. People don't even hear your apology. It's just an excuse to find the next person to victimize through cancel culture. That's all it is. Witch hunts don't end when you apologize. They just don't. They don't end if you refuse to apologize. But at least you die on your die with your morals intact instead of kowtowing. Witch hunts only end when it just becomes apparent to everyone that it's a witch hunt and that the whole thing needs to be stopped. And particularly in video games, that's all this is. It's like all this SJW identity politics stuff is just witch hunts and cancel culture stuff. Like, there's a way better and more important thing to focus on. When Ubisoft, kind of obviously at this point, has had all of this actual abuse happening to actual people, nobody in their right mind should be focused on the slightly on the way an artist depicts a fictional transgendered character in Deadly Premonition 2. Yeah, it just shouldn't be the priority at all. People should be focused on real people and the real victims, and not fake imaginary people with fake imaginary victimization. Which is constantly an issue that people seem to not grasp. Regardless, I'll get into a rant if I go much further into that, so let's move on. TechRaptor has an article. The game Grounded has some accessibility features detailed, particularly in arachnophobia safe mode that apparently just removes the spider's legs and furriness. Let's see. So the options include reducing the number of spider's legs to 4, remove all spider legs, remove all spider legs, remove spider fangs, remove all spider legs, change the spider mesh to a simple shape, remove all spider legs, change the spider mesh to simple shapes, change spider materials to simple colors with shiny textures. So, yeah. I don't know how many people would want to play Grounded at all, though. If this is the way you're gonna have to play it because you have such severe arachnophobia of fictional spiders. Whereas, like, when you first see the game trailer, let's see, here's a spider being shown. So, and actually looking at what this game looks like, it to me looks like they pretty much are just on a survival island. Like this really does just look like a standard survival game, and that it's clearly Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but without perhaps the resolution that they actually get unshrunk at the end of the game. And I'm not sure what you can really do super different with being shrunken down, because it's almost like Ant-Man. Like, Ant-Man as a superhero is not very interested if you just think about what a character named Ant-Man's basic abilities would be. The ability to shrink down to the size of an ant isn't interesting. That's why they have to, in the Marvel movies at least, also give him super strength and the ability to potentially be very large, and also allow him to shrink down to a quantum level and manipulate time eventually. They also had to make Ant-Man as a character way more interesting and better written than I think he has been written in the actual comics. At least so much to say as in the comics there's at least one story where Ant-Man literally beats up his wife, and they didn't do that in the movie, thank goodness. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Restoration Games applies for a HeroQuest Legacies trademark. Here's the classic box art of HeroQuest. Not sure if Restoration Games owns HeroQuest in general, and they think it's going to be a reboot or continuation of the 1980s HeroQuest board game. Let's see. But it is probably going to be a board game. It's probably not going to be a digital game. If I was to guess. Yeah. And I don't know if you really could even do HeroQuest on PC and really add much there. At a certain point, you can do the things that HeroQuest did and not bother to use the license of HeroQuest, and you've just got something like Tabletop Simulator. Well, do I want to put this on the field, or do I just want to let it hit me? Next, we have a game on Steam called Escape from House, which looks like it's a probably dark screenshot syndrome horror asset flip game for 59 cents. Allegedly full audio and everything. Yep, nothing there of enough polish. The requirements of quality for horror games have gone up quite a bit due to the fact that there's just been so many terrible horror games. And in all fairness, if we think about like the Resident Evil 2 remake and the Resident Evil 1 remake, even that is probably the only game worth playing nowadays. There's really not much of a reason why you would need to play much other games. I mean, you could play some of the Amnesia games. Certainly, they had some relevancy, but that's about it. That game Outcast or Outlast, I think it was called Outlast. I'm gonna get this wrong, but I'm gonna guess this is the Brazilian flag. I'm probably wrong on that, but they have a classification of a game called World of Warcraft Shadowlands for I believe computer is what it's saying. So some perhaps special bundling or a new expansion coming out for World of Warcraft. One would think that they would schedule an announcement if they were going to do a new expansion for World of Warcraft, which they almost certainly will. Perhaps BlizzCon was cancelled, and so they're just not ready to do that. Let's see. Netflix, or at least this Twitter account called NX on Netflix, which is a verified account. It's a home for all things geek. They plan on doing a 6-part live-action The Witcher spin-off series from Declan DeBarra and Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich. I don't know who either one of these are. It's called The Witcher Blood Origin. This would be 1200 years before Geralt of Rivia, which does make some sense. And that was pretty much what I was saying as far as what the next Witcher game pretty much needs to do also. Because it's going to be very difficult for them to try and figure out to do something after the events of The Witcher 3. And I don't think they can really do much with Geralt of Rivia as a character. So they got their trilogy out of it, and the third game is by far better than the first two. Although some people may make the argument that the first two games were more true to the books or more appealing to the niche audience, where Witcher 3 just had a very large, broad appeal. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article. The Koei Tecmo financial report confirms that a Western Persona 5 Scramble is going to be released, which I feel like we already knew that, but okay. Also, the importing company, or at least it was an importing company before this point, Play Asia, is actually going to become a publisher and a localizer and an experimental in this first experiment to bring over Moero Chronicles H, I believe is the name of the game. It may just be called Moero or Moero Chronicles, which will be interesting because it does. It's basically a company taking the games that wouldn't have gotten localized and released because they're so niche, and because they would often have requirements of being censored if a regular publishing company tried to publish it, and they're trying to do something sort of like a limited run games, but for more Japanese and Asian games. But yeah, I don't know how much that really changes much, because it really just all needs to still go to PC, because they're not going to get it on the PlayStation. They might get it on the eShops of the Xbox, but I don't think that's really going to affect much. They may get it on the Switch, but yeah, probably only in a digital format. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Idle Slayer, which looks like it's an infinite runner jumping game. Doesn't look amazingly terrible, actually. It looks like a half Mario Run game and half Ninja Flappy Bird game with some upgrades. It's early access for $3.99 discounted in English only. The only thing I'd say is $3.99 is probably a little too expensive for an infinite runner idle game, and there's really nothing here to criticize or play as a video game critic. It's just going to be an idle game, and if I'm going to have an idle game, I would probably want it on my cell phone, not on Steam. The idea of having my computer run non-stop for that is pretty silly, even though I did do that for actually quite many hours with time clickers, and I've pretty much stopped doing that on time clickers.
You will soon learn. I've faith in my blade. Take that. Take that.
I still haven't gotten around to building any decks, so it's no surprise that I'm getting my butt handed to me. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hard Vacuum, which looks like a fly around space game from the perspective of a cockpit game. It's early access at $22.49 and requires VR. It's English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, there might be something here. If you have VR and you want to play something that is close to the equivalent of playing X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
Weakness the power.
See, that's an outfit that's fairly scant, fairly lewd, and they didn't bother to censor that. Yeah, I think for Shadowverse they probably censored a few things in the first year or so, and then just gave up on it and just said, yeah, forget it. But they also don't really embrace too much more than just bikini levels of skin showing. Although, you know, yeah, I was about to say something silly, but it would be funny if it turned out that next summer, if the pandemic is done by next summer, people are just in more clothing on the beaches because they would be perhaps pale, sickly, overweight, and less of a, and there might just be a level of less of a desire to to be a bit of an exhibitionist. But it would probably, if that actually did happen, it'd probably be a percentage point in one direction or the other.
But my will abides.
These guys actually know what they're doing. Next we have a game on Steam called Emerald Lake, which I think is a direct reference to the Jason movies. It seems like you might be playing as Jason, but they probably don't have the Jason license, and frankly, the last game that thought it got the Jason's license didn't actually have all the Jason license. They didn't send it to legal to clear out and make sure that they had it.
How much is in it for me?
So this game Emerald Lake actually does look like it might be a little bit more polished. If it's single player, I might consider it. $3.99. English, Russian full audio. That's just suspect a little bit. And single player only. The Russian full audio and English not full audio is what makes it suspect. But there is oddly a little bit more polish here from what I'm seeing. But this certainly could be just trickery too. One of the things I found out that's weird is this character, the way his decks activate are if you have an even number of cards in your draw pile, you get resonance, and then a lot of the cards activate effects if you have resonance enabled. But you would think if they were going to do that, they would have made another character that had some kind of anti-resonance where every odd number of cards you had potentially activated an effect. But then again, you also would think that the Havencraft cards would be more around healing, and they really aren't. So there's just some different ideas around what the hero abilities are. I think it probably is a good argument as to Hearthstone made a good choice to potentially give cards that changed hero abilities, and that they gave cards that ways to play as like different heroes that I think might have had different hero abilities. I don't think actually that's true. I think you had to play a card to change the hero ability first. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article that for the PS Vita and PS4, Labyrinth of Galleria Coven of Darkness launches November 26th in Japan. This looks like a dungeon crawler game. It was supposed to come out in July 25th of 2019. So. Jim Sterling made a interesting accusation, particularly around Nintendo fans, for no real reason, that they are starving for hype because there's just been no hype around games since everything is delayed. Which, you know, there might be some truth to that, frankly. We may start to see a lot of the people that like to talk about games and be hyped about games just kind of go through something. I don't know what that something would be, but in some way kind of go through a sort of withdrawal around hype. And I don't know what that really would affect in the long run or cause to happen. one would think that the logical response here for gamers is almost no gamers out there, except for perhaps poor kids that are both financially poor or just so incredibly rich in time that they've played all of the games they own. With the exception of kids, almost everybody else has a major backlog and pile of games. So the logical thing to do at this moment would be to start playing some of their older games and working on the backlogs and catching up. And frankly, there's still a few free games coming out on the Epic Store every month, and there's Amazon Prime, Twitch free games, and there's plenty other demos and free games out there. You could find your own hype. It's just a matter of getting off of the mainstream video game news reporting media sites and the hype they try to build. Which, yeah, I definitely think that there is a level of people that have trouble around that idea.
How much is in it for me?
And I definitely can say I was, until probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, I was a fairly heavily watcher of CNN, which of my options there really was only CNN or Fox News, and I think that was the case for a lot of people. But at a certain point, the news became just so incredibly repetitive and so incredibly laced with yellow journalism and like pre-planned out talking points. When you see the exact same conversations being guided and directed by 3 or 4 different CNN hosts as they interview like 3 or 4 different people, but it's always, let's push this narrative, let's push this narrative, let's push this narrative. When you see the interviewer, instead of asking a basic question to someone being interviewed, instead suggesting an entire paragraph of a thought to the interviewee and then asking the interviewee to just agree with them, it's at that point you've really left any kind of investigative journalism or news reporting at all, and it's just become a political talking head show, and that's all CNN became, and it was all around the president every single day, no matter what. Even when there were other things to talk about, those things were getting ignored heavily. And I definitely know I am better for not watching CNN anymore. So I feel like that probably would be the same case for anybody that feels like they're going through withdrawal of video game hype and announcements for new games. You will be better off almost certainly. Although it is also slightly different. Like, this would be kind of the best time for almost all video game journalists to die.
This one's for my family.
But then you'd think Twitch and YouTube would gain increases in views, and maybe I've seen a small number, but not really anything more than, I'd say, maybe a dozen extra views. And it doesn't feel like YouTube content creators are creating anything. If anything, it feels like this last week YouTube content creators and have kind of just given up and stopped doing anything. And a lot of it really does go to make me feel like a lot of the content creators were only in it for advertising and for money, and undoubtedly a lot of them were, but the second that the money even started to dry up a little bit, they stopped stopped bothering to create content. Where I've seen some other content creators have realized, well, we have an incredible amount of free time now. We should make more content, not less, because people have more free time also. So, in that vein, I found out that Gary Whitta, who used to show up on the Tested podcast, which I've long since stopped listening to, at some point made his own podcast inside of Animal Crossing, which was just insane. And frankly, Gary Whitta was always a little insane, and he still seems a little insane. Insane in the sense of being a little weird, not insane as the point where
Let's have a look-see.
I think he's actually crazy.
All together now.
But I found out he was doing this in Animal Crossing late night talk show that actually aired in the morning. And one of the persons he interviewed was Felicia Day, who is going to be in one of those games, and I talked about her. Turns out the reason why she's kind of been nowhere for the past 3 years is that she got pregnant and had a kid. And I guess it was just not reported so much because, to quote directly from her, Hollywood people didn't understand what she was doing and didn't care what she was doing. And I think that is probably a very accurate description of her entire career. Yep, this is a really bad time for me to play that puppet. So yeah, that does kind of explain her disappearance, as it were, from her small career.
It's calmest before the storm.
And I wonder how many other like B, C, and D tier celebrities really just did decide to have a family and that ruined their career. Because if you are going to even have a chance of being successful in Hollywood, I bet you have to focus 100% on that.
By the storm.
Do I want to evolve this?
Coming at you.
Sure, why not? It's a kind of terrible card to evolve. Moving on. Codename Terra is on Steam. It looks like it's maybe a VR asset flip game. Doesn't look very good. Like a little bit of a heads-up display, but no weapons and no people and no appearance of any puzzles, so it looks just kind of like a walking simulator at best. It's $23.99, English and Italian. They're calling it a 3D co-op communication game, which in my book sounds like just a load of BS. Let's see, do that. And then return. Let's see, Gematsu has an article. A Japan fighting game publishers roundtable live stream is set for August 1st. It'll feature Arc System Works, Arika, Bandai Namco, Capcom, Koei Tecmo, and SNK. So it seems like they will have some conversations. I'm not sure if there will actually be any announcements here.
You cannot escape the shadow.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's just maybe some very famous Japanese fighting game developers and directors are going to sit around and talk to each other. Which, alright. Does seem like maybe nobody has anything better to do. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Toilet Management Simulator, which sadly this is probably someone's job, and this clearly is a troll game.
Be gone.
So like 2 reasons why to not buy this game immediately. At $4.99, English, German, Russian, and Turkish. It's clearly trying to be a joke game that streamers will play, which I will say I have not seen any joke games actually gain any notoriety at all lately, which is probably a great thing. Alright, let's do this. If I evolve this, does that do anything? Nope.
A worthless endeavor.
Komatsu has an article here. Dragon Quest Rivals is going to rebrand as Dragon Quest Rivals Ace and add a single player mode in August. This looks like some kind of card game. A free to play digital card game. If I'd known this actually existed, I might have played this, but it probably isn't actually available on PC or on Steam. Dragon Quest in general is super popular in Japan, so I wouldn't be surprised if there is a decent number of people playing it. Although, in all fairness, I would also say that there is a there is probably a decent chance that any collectible card game based off of a licensed product won't probably be that good. We're not getting anywhere, are we? Alright, so that was one of everything. Let's try these automatic decks. I still really haven't opened enough packs to make a good deck or even start to think about doing deck building. But the default decks clearly can't win, or at least I can't win playing them. And since I have done all of Chapter 1 of all these characters, I pretty much know their story, which I will say Chapter 1 story for each of the character is downright awful. It's just terribly written. It could have definitely been rewritten a lot better, and it just doesn't accomplish much. I will say that Chapter 2 kind of starts putting the leader characters together in a way that they actually have a chance of potentially having some character development. And so you are 2 or 3 notches better in the writing by Chapter 2, to the point where if you could skip Chapter 1, I would say just skip it. But you won't get all the rewards, the small amounts of gold and vials and things. And once I do get all the rewards, there's going to be basically no reason to ever go back and do the main story. And I'm not sure it's even worth it to do the main story for the rewards. It is sadly making an argument that collectible card games shouldn't have a single player mode, or at least at the beginning. Maybe they think about adding that later, the way Gwent kind of did. There might be an argument for that.
The Force abandoned me.
I clicked on the link for Steam for the Dragon Quest card game. This item is not currently available in your region. Can't even see it. So, yeah. that certainly explains why I haven't seen it. But I guess if it comes to the West, there is an argument to potentially trying that. And jumping ship once again. Because 4 years in with Shadowverse, the game's fine, certainly, and I'm pretty much pot committed at this point, so I couldn't really stop playing. But at least not until the Marvel card game comes out. But there is something to be said about this game being fairly long in the tooth.
Years still turn.
Add this.
Just don't. Just don't.
So do I want to return this? What was a Greenwood Guardian? No, I don't think I want to. And yeah, I can now see the beginning of the end. Like, this is... So, I was definitely not lying about the there not being a ton of these. One of the things I did hear is that Roblox used some audio file they didn't have the license to for a sound effect, and the person that made the sound effect is like suing Roblox, and all the 9-year-olds that are playing Roblox are upset with the guy who is suing to either get a license or protect his copyright on the sound effect. Now, in all fairness, perhaps sound effects are not long enough or distinct enough to deserve a copyright, and that is a problem with the copyright law, certainly. The Mario coin sound, for instance, is like 3 notes, and it's like trademarked or copyrighted, and there's just some absolute insanity around that being even possible. But in the systems that we are talking about, the United States system, which is broken, certainly, the guy has a right to his copyright, and for a massively successful game like Roblox to use somebody's content and not have the license to it is that massively successful game's mistake that they need to remedy. I'm a little surprised we don't get more stories of games stealing assets, but frankly, the Unity Asset Store and the Unreal Engine Asset Store make it fairly easy to buy something that at least you think you have the license to. So it's fairly easy to avoid that. Let's see. Okay, so we want to play this, and we want to evolve this. Now whenever we summon something, things are going to get +1/+1. So, attack this. And see, now this is going to have +1/+1. So I can play this, and we can play this. Gamatsu has for the PS4 and Switch, Mary's Skelter Finale details Riley, Ellie, Rachel, and Blood Farm, sisters living in the Rydo Island slums. And here you have some very young looking Moe anime characters. Although, yeah. Yeah, I guess this is the new Moe style. Moe at this point in my mind has kind of expanded. I believe Mary Skelter is kind of like people in hell or people in a demon realm. And you can definitely see that this person is poor from the tattered clothing and dirty clothing. In the blood farm, you raise blood flowers inside of dungeons using the blood farm system, which, okay.
Tread here.
Turn an allied follower amulet to draw a card.
A place to call home. Come on!
As for what Mary Skelter Final looks like, it is, I believe, just a dungeon crawler game. And this is, I guess, the blood farms that you can have. Interesting. And here's a great statement about just how much they've talked about this game and hyped it up. Read more about the game here, 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 and here. So it's just like, yeah, there's been no less than 8 articles around Mary Skelter Final.
Why are you here?
This is.
Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
Let's see, what can we do?
It won't be long now. You won't get away with this. Stop. Into the shadows. A place to call home.
See, Gamatsu has an article here. Monster Rancher 2 for Switch, iOS, and Android has a debut trailer due out this fall in Japan, which I think we had kind of heard about this, and I don't know if this is a port of an old game, an old Monster Rancher game. Kind of seems like it is. And I don't feel like Monster Rancher, or in this case in Japanese Monster Farm, is really going to actually make it to the West with any excitement. It's kind of nice at the moment that all I have is daily quest for the single player mode, though, because it doubles the amount of effort, certainly, because what I'm doing now is trying to play ranked and actually win, but even if I did get victories, it's not really accomplishing much besides increasing the player level of the character, which even losing does that. But there definitely needs to be kind of a merger so that I'm getting multiplayer quests. I imagine the multiplayer quests have better daily rewards than the single player requests. And once I stop doing the single player, I'll only be playing on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, probably. I don't think I'm going to bother to play daily to get the temporary gems. Unless there's just something about the temporary gem system that I don't understand.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Taisho X Alice Heads and Tails for Switch launches October 29th in Japan. This looks like an otome visual novel. A young maiden visual novel. Apparently, it was originally a PS Vita game. I guess I can't read the Sarah rating. Yep, so no telling what age rating that is rated at.
And perfectly stunning.
See, next we have a game on Steam called The Soldier's Factory, a top-down stealth game.
For now.
So far, it looks like it's probably just a low-effort shooter game. Yeah, I'm not seeing any visual polish there. For $24.99, no discount, English and German. Yep. We are really just getting about no quality at all. I don't know why I played that first. That would have been so much better to play this first.
My friends. Lovely day for a fight.
This is gonna do 1 damage to my leader. Darn it. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Intrepid Izzy, which, looking at the actual gameplay in the video, it actually looked fairly polished for what looks like a platforming game. Visually, I'm not seeing an amazing game here, but her arms swinging back and forth and her running and having different costumes, like, that seems like something. Yeah, and this does look like a game. Wow, we actually found a game. $18.99, English only. Put it on the follow list. Let's see if we can get some reviews. Yeah. Alright, now this should be able to power that up.
Come get some.
I could have killed that first.
Nothing scary with allies by your side.
Saved myself 1 health. See, next we have a game called Lost Bazaar. I will say I did curate some games, so there definitely were some games I didn't even bother to open. This is a game that probably should have been curated. It looks different, definitely. It just doesn't look good. It looks like a experimental Chinese game, free to play, English and Hungarian. If this is based off a board game, which it may very well be, I can't really tell or figure out what it is based off of, and it doesn't actually look good, which is the core problem. Rush or +1/+1.
Takes a thief to catch a thief.
5/5
You're done for.
for the adept thief.
Totally got this. Easy peasy,
Having
lemon
a couple of
squeezy.
thief class cards
Come get
is
some.
interesting, but
Friendly.
there's not quite enough cards in Shadowverse where you could make a deck of even 15 thief cards, really. Because I think there's maybe 3 in the entire game, so you can have 3 copies of those 3 cards. Which isn't to say that I'd like to see Shadowverse just have 3 or 4 times as many cards as it has. I think it has about 1,700. So if it went up to 5,000, that probably wouldn't be terrible. But there's definitely some argument that the cards are a little
The time is upon us. Hear the prophecy.
lacking in variety. Which I would also say Hearthstone at times, with a lot of their cards being put into wild, kind of ruined like the mechs and the Murlocs at some point. Draw 3 cards and then deal. So do 6 damage to an enemy follower. Alright, fine.
Continue to believe. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Aeon, which feels like a pantheon or a Greek name. Let's see. And I think that's what this is based around. It says Ancient Olympic Games, but honestly, it just looks like an asset flip low effort game. I'm pretty much calling all games that at this point. $13.99 requires VR, English full audio. It probably would be helpful to just double check check yourself and make sure I haven't raised my standards too high.
Have faith.
I don't think I've done that, but it might be the case. Might be time to think about doing a follow list cleanup and think about where things are. Although there's also a good argument to not bothering to do a follow list cleanup until actually in December and then airing it somewhere in June of 2021, just because there's so few games coming out. Next we have a game that came out called Synergia, which is tagged dystopian visual novel cyberpunk anime, and this is kind of more of an art style for like pencil drawings. Well, I'm not gonna say I immediately hate it.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
If anything, there's just kind of a weirdness to it. Like, it seems like they know how to draw faces, but they don't know how to do lining or shadowing, which is an interesting place to be in. Certainly, yeah. Because normally you would have some lines in the hair and some more shadows than just this here on the face. But the actual proportions of the face aren't bad. The proportions of the hand look fine. So it kind of feels more like an art style. It's $10.79, English, Spain, Spanish, and Chinese. I'll put it on the follow list. Although, at a certain point, like, at a certain point, I don't know why I'm putting any more visual novels on the follow list. TechRaptor has the review for Destroy All Humans, the re-release or remake of Destroy All Humans. I bet it's not particularly well reviewed, although that's not fair. I already saw the reviews in general from Metacritic. But yeah, this is another THQ Nordic game that they're just re-releasing, so I wouldn't expect too much. So they gave it a 6.5. If you thought the original was good, Destroy All Humans looks and plays even better. Crypto 137 controls incredibly smooth and looks awesome in action. However, unfixable corrupted save files, short length, untouched voice acting are quite disappointing. Pros: amazing new graphics and effects, refined movement and gameplay, large detailed environments, optional objectives during missions. Cons are save game corrupted. That would probably be patched. New lost mission is disappointing. Voice acting, audio is poor quality, and it's still short. So it really makes it feel like Destroy All Humans is for people who have never played Destroy All Humans again, or people who've really, really love Destroy All Humans, but everybody else need not apply. Which I do fall under the category of somebody who's never played it before, so I could see perhaps knowing that it isn't going to be that good and still moving forward and choosing to play it. Let's see. Manage to go ahead and put a copy of that in your deck. So I can take this, and instead do that. The Analog Pocket pre-order is on August 3rd. I believe this is the game that has the crank on the side, although they seem to have kind of polished up the appearance and aren't really emphasizing this. I do know that this screen is a sharp memory screen, kind of like an e-paper screen, but not quite. It still takes a little bit of current, but not as much. But it also has a much higher refresh rate. And Adafruit, a electronic component salesman, is working as a company. They're working to sell that screen, which I find the screen perhaps more interesting, and the new technology in the screen more interesting than the analog. I suppose it is also worth mentioning that Experimental Pi has a new case that is in the shape of the original Game Boy, unlike the previous case that was in the shape of the Game Boy from Retro Flag that only could use a Raspberry Pi 0 or 0W. The Experimental Pi form is thicker and designed to actually house any Raspberry Pi, well, most of them at least, a 0, a B, B+, 3, or 4. So there's like active cooling in it, there's access to the ports, it's by default only connectable to a rechargeable lithium. Which that really addresses a lot of the issues with the Retro Flag Game Boy Raspberry Pi case, because the Retro Flag one only had enough buttons to play up to Super NES and Genesis era games, and a Raspberry Pi Zero only had enough power to play those games, whereas the Experimental Pi unit has an analog stick. It has 6 buttons on the front face. It has a left and right trigger. It has a D-pad, of course. So you can play more arcade fighting style games with that layout. You can play actual PlayStation 1 games and whatever are compatible Nintendo 64 games are at least reasonably, understandably, possibly playable there. Also, a big thing to mention is that it's like a bigger screen, and I believe a higher resolution screen compared to the Retro Flag. But in all fairness, the Retro Flag Game Boy case came out like 2 years ago, so there has been 2 years of improvement in the Experimental Pi case. And it is also still worth mentioning that the Experimental Pi case is still way expensive at $120 minimum to buy, and probably closer to $200 when all is said and done. So you are approaching the point of buying a used Switch, which honestly I should get on eBay and see if I could get a Switch that actually works refurbished. See if people are starting to get desperate enough to sell their Switches. Because I'd be fine with a first generation standard Switch. Second generation has slight improvements. But this thing is just not gonna work.
It won't be long now.
Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. Eudian Chronicle 100 Heroes Kickstarter campaign launched. It's an ambitious new RPG from the creators of Suikoden. Okay. So, this is one of those growing examples of a Japanese company trying to have a Kickstarter.
Impressive. Looks like you won.
Looks like a game. Doesn't look like an RPG Maker game. So, I gotta applaud that much. And here's a boss fight mechanic where people are just standing all around the area doing attacks. There seems to be like no heads-up display at all. That's weird. See, OpenCritic has the reviews for the remake of Destroy All Humans. They're giving it a fair rating. 49% of critics recommend. The top critic average is giving it a 71% out of 100, 71 out of 100, which really just goes to show how skewed reviews are. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Over and Over, which looks like it's a 3D ball platformer with dark screenshot syndrome. Seems like it's very possibly a joke clone of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. It's $5.39 English only. I don't see anything impressive on it. I would also say if you're playing as a ball, that would be really annoying. To try to climb up to great heights. I know I've heard of Suikoden, but I couldn't really tell you anything about it. It must have been a game that that is fairly old. What did I just do? TechRaptor retweeted their updated Paper Mario Origami King Chinese language version and Toad rights. They've changed the title completely now, so it doesn't even so no longer even claims that it's been censored in the Chinese, which I think it's really just BS. Like, Chinese are under threat of actual retaliatory actions if they're not jingoistic enough towards their country, and so they've literally been brainwashed at this point to argue against every single criticism, regardless of how valid it is. And yeah, no doubt it's censored. Everything is censored in China. Like, if you're not willing to admit that, you're not making an intellectually honest argument. Can do this. I think it is also worth mentioning, though, to not just get into yet another Chinese rant, China government rant, that Australia is also ultra conservative. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, if you kind of ignore all the African countries and South American countries that don't ever actually make news with their forms of governance or how terrible it is, and if you kind of ignore all the Middle Eastern countries that you know are inherently censoring everything to the point where they're destroying ancient relics, if you put all those caveats into it, I would argue Australia is second only to China in their censorship. They're just kind of a little bit more open about it when there's lots of games that are not allowed classification, and that's exactly the same that China is doing. Is they're saying we're not going to classify some of these games, and if these games aren't classified, then they can't be for sale. And it seems like Australia did it first, so China may have learned it from them. And so this is kind of just a long way to say I don't think Australia gets enough dirty looks that it deserves for the BS it does for itself. I'm just gonna get wrecked. Yeah, all these people have like way better cards than what I have, and they actually know what they're doing. And in all fairness, they're probably also paying attention. Although I would say Shadowverse is probably the easiest game so far to not really pay attention to and just play. Let's see. Can I do this and do this? And that does 5. Then we have to do that. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Fay Fever, which is tagged as a free-to-play game, casual puzzle game. Looks to me more like a point-and-click adventure game, if I was to guess. Let's see, it's free. And I kind of want to play it, but it's kind of no reason to play it either. It's English only. And let's see if this developer's made anything else. Well, I guess go check out Fay Fever. I'm gonna break my own rules and put it on the fault list even though it's a free game. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Painted Legend, which looks like it is a flat 2D cardboard game.
Mother, father,
Which there might be something to this.
Hey,
No
But
more crying.
there might be really nothing here also. Because you have this like menu, but I think that's the only time you see from that perspective. And this is $4.49, English, Russian, and German. So I guess the question to find out is, what were the reviews for Painted Legend 1? Because that answers everything, doesn't it? So, Painted Legend 1 is mixed. And by the looks of it, it looks almost exactly the same as Painted Legend 2. And it came out in 2016, so you're talking 4 years later, which isn't drastically flooding the Steam store with copies of the same game or anything, but you kind of would have hoped for more improvement over 4 years. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called U-Volley, which looks like a volleyball game. Doesn't look quite polished enough for a realistic game, nor do I think I'd really want to play a volleyball game. Like, volleyball in particular feels like one of those sports that you really want to play or maybe watch live, but you really wouldn't want to play in the digital format. I think there's a certain level of accessibility in playing volleyball that is not there in football or basketball. While where you can play football and basketball, you can't do it at a professional level. Whereas I imagine an average person incorrectly assumes that they could probably play against a professional volleyball player and hold their own. And almost certainly that's wrong, but I still suspect that's what people subconsciously would think. I'd also say I probably would never actively choose to watch volleyball, and I don't think too many people would choose to watch volleyball on TV or anything like that. It's more a thing that people would watch because they happen to be at the beach or they've just got absolutely nothing else to do. Yeah, I guess there is a certain question about when I have a hour-and-a-half stream and all I've done is lost 10 times in a row. Does that potentially drive off some potential viewers? I mean, if it does, all I can say is sorry, you came to the wrong place, because that is gonna happen sometimes, maybe a lot of times. I'm definitely not playing this game in an attempt to win, and I have no interest whatsoever of becoming desperate and trying to win, which is really what makes that whole Magic the Gathering claiming that I was intentionally stalling the game such a ridiculous false claim. It's like, why would I stall the game? I don't even care.
Want to play?
Next we have a game on Steam called From Frontier, which looks like an RPG Maker game with a lot of anime looking characters, but the art style seems to kind of drastically change all over the place. Yeah, seems weird. Yeah. English is not supported for this game. It's $14.39. It's Chinese and Japanese, and by the looks of it, I would guess it's probably a Chinese attempt at a RPG.
I will protect even in death.
Destroy that. Summon a leech. Summon that. And burial right means I draw a card. So oh, I forgot how burial rights work, didn't I? Yeah.
I'll show you.
Your flesh and bone life is too dear.
Next we have a game called Kyo. Guess is how you pronounce that. Let's see. Seems like it's a top-down wilderness survival game, and it doesn't seem like there's much here. Again, this feels like maybe a Chinese game, but honestly, it might be a little bit too polished even for a Chinese game. It has a weird tilt shift camera angle it's doing. $14.99 is way too expensive for what it's showing me. English full audio. That doesn't make it to the follow list. Let's see. Next we have a game called There Was the Moon, which looks like it's a probably walking simulator, maybe a first-person puzzle game. It might be something trying to be like Myst, but those screenshots don't look amazingly good. And I would heavily say that if you're going to make a game like Myst, you need to have something with some kind of console, something that you can at least put on the screenshot that makes it obvious this is where you're going to manipulate something and solve some kind of problem. Let's see.
Happy Undeath Day!
You intend to bury me?
Alright.
Balls bounce, heads fall.
So yeah, I guess we'll put There Was the Moon on the follow list. It's $9.99. You know, we may just need to stop playing ranked. Wow. And I really have gotten nowhere in ranked, but I may just need to play unranked games. And maybe I need to actually find some private matches and play some private games for a mission alone. There is also a Take-Two tournament that I have some entries for, and there definitely is a mission around that. But yeah, win 7 matches, main story, or practice for 40 rupees is actually a lot easier, considering how we just played, I think, 10 plus games. Yeah. We are approaching a point where it's a little bit dangerous. We may very well hit a point where I realize that, oh yeah, I just can't win. Although in all fairness, I haven't given it a try at all. I need to do a deck rebuild, and I don't have time to do a deck rebuild. I'm just getting extremely overwhelmed with having to do the solo mode and having to stream and just having insomnia and being unproductive in general. With any luck, this will be the last article I ever have to talk about Wizards of the Coast or Magic. They're hiring a lead client engineer, which arguably means maybe they're working on a mobile version, or they're just trying to improve their game somewhat. This is in Renton, Washington, which is not a place you typically see. Video game listings. Alright, so I buried the lead and didn't talk about this, but we did talk about this in the at the end of the stream on Friday. Tech Raptor says X-Play and G4 TV reboot is coming in 2021. I don't know where they're getting X-Play for sure is coming out, because I saw nothing that said that at all. There's just a thing that says we never stop playing, but the vast majority of the content on G4 TV, with the exception of Attack of the Show, actually had video game content around it. And most of the people that worked at Attack of the Show, I think, probably played games. And by the way, if you just take it literal, we never stopped playing does not inherently mean video games, even though they're showing video game stuff. I am still not 100% sure that this whole thing isn't a troll. I am still not 100% sure that this whole thing does not end up with there simply being a YouTube or Twitch channel around G4 TV. And apparently Spike TV got turned into Esquire channel, not Paramount channel, which, yeah, there's nothing here that says specifically X-Play. That they're pulling that out of an assumption. The Morgan Webb tweeted a response that I'm just impressed someone remembered the password to the Twitter, which I think maybe somebody did just hack the Twitter. 4-length Twitter accounts try to get hacked all the time, and this would have been the point where Morgan Webb would have come out and said, I've got some exciting news to announce. Yep, it's true, we're coming back, or I'm coming back. If anything, this pretty much just indicates that she has no interest of coming back and doing X-Play. So is X-Play really X-Play without Morgan Webb? Maybe you can make that argument. That might be the case. But then you have Adam Sessler. Whoa, that's a Twitter account I didn't expect to see again. And you can see he's got like a beard and is bald. So he too doesn't announce anything either. They're playing it far too coy if they were coming back. And is X-Play without Adam Sessler X-Play? Absolutely not. The only thing I would say as far as former people that worked at G4 that you wouldn't want to see is I wouldn't want to see Leo Laporte back, because he's kind of a stick in the mud that just hates youngins, for lack of a better description. I don't think you would get Chris Hardwick to come back. I don't think you'd get a lot of people to come back. Even though a lot of people did not really springboard their careers by working at G4, which also is an argument to make. Does X-Play coming back really mean anything? Oh, I guess X-Play also put up the video. So, okay. I guess that might be where the X-Play thing might happen. But, yeah. If a new channel called G4 TV comes into existence, let's face it, it would be a new channel Wouldn't be really a continuation. It would be what MTV is now compared to what MTV was when it first launched. It would be a whole new generation of people. Is it going to have... One thing that occurred to me is like, is it going to have like Ninja and Dr. Disrespect? Because that would be interesting, certainly, but I don't know if that would really work. Is it going to have the likes of PewDiePie or other like major streamer people be the celebrities, or is it going to just have a bunch of people you don't know? There's definitely lots of people in the mainstream video game media you wouldn't want to see work at X-Play, but I think CBS or NBC Universal, no, CBS, I think CBS that owns IGN and Giant Bomb, I think they probably also own the rights to G4 TV. So do you want to see people from IGN or Giant Bomb all of a sudden become X-Play? I could almost see Giant Bomb fairly easily transitioning themselves to X-Play. But when you look at kind of Giant Bomb's Patreon type membership scheme and the extra content that they put behind their paywall, of which I've never actually seen any of it because I've never bothered to pay them, is that going to feel really like X-Play? When it really boils down to it, even if they did get Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb back, is it really going to feel like X-Play nearly 10 years later? Yeah, it's probably been about 10 years, I would say. So, I hate to pee in people's cereal, if that's a saying, but this is really doomed to fail from the word go. There's no way this works unless it's just going to be 100% nostalgia and it's just going to be a YouTube channel that plays all the old footage and old content. Or at least it's going to have a vast majority of that. And that wouldn't even really work, because if you're showing 10, 20-year-old episodes of X-Play, and then you have new episodes of X-Play with new hosts or significantly older hosts, there's just going to be this major disconnect that is just not going to... it's just not going to work. It's like... There's basically no way for this to work. But let's say it did work. Even at that. The truth of the matter is, if G4 TV is run like a cable channel, it's going to have maybe 4 to 6 years in which it focuses on the video game nerd geek stuff. And then it's going to get a new person in charge, some new CEO, some new upper manager person who's going to try to cancel a bunch of things that wasn't his idea and put in a bunch of ideas that are his idea, and he's going to start pushing for broader appeal. All cable channels do this, and that's why all cable channels suck in the long run. You have things like the Sci-Fi Channel being kind of a great example of that, where it had a really good run in the first maybe even 10 years for Sci-Fi Channel, and then it just tried to have more broad appeal, more broad appeal, more broad appeal, to the point where it eventually just betrayed its original audience so much that I would never watch anything on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I haven't in probably 15 years. Even though I kind of love sci-fi, but also half the time the things on Sci-Fi Channel are just movies. And that's the exact same thing for everything else. Every other cable channel, they just try to get broad appeal. So, yeah, even if it does succeed, and this isn't just a troll, there needed to be a face, there needed to be a new host, there needed to be somebody to say, I'm the new person, I'm in charge of G4, and we're relaunching it. Something along that line. And there's just no... no way this is gonna end well. At best, I guess you go in knowing that it will eventually fail. That the best case scenario for G4 TV is the same base case scenario for any cable channel, unless it tries to be a YouTube channel. And honestly, even YouTube channels after about 5 years, they either kind of drastically change because they get bored, or they kind of fail too. Geek and Sundry, a great example of that, where they kind of kickstarted every year or every season to force people to pay them more to continue to making the things they were making, and even at that they stopped making the things that were interesting. Yeah, the best case scenario though is you're going to have 4 to 10 good years at G4, and then it's just going to be that heartbreak all over again for a new generation. But I guess maybe that's just the way everything goes. Nothing lasts forever, so I might be being a little too critical there. But, you know, I really don't want to see old Kevin Pereira doing Attack of the Show again. I don't think Adam Sessler really has enough in him to do Attack of the Show again. He's fairly old. I don't want to see some Giant Bomb person or some other Gamergate person. The worst case scenario is they bring back X-Play and it's Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn hosting. That would be about the worst case scenario. But yeah, I don't think there's reason to get your hype up or your hope up there. If anything, it would have been probably better for them to say, we're going to bring X-Play to NBC. We can announce that we're going to be part of the summer lineup at NBC or CBS or even ABC. I wouldn't want them to be on Fox, although their attitude would fit fairly well with Fox. Fox also has a pretty terrible history of not supporting their shows, unless they're The Simpsons or Family Guy. But yeah, if they said that they once a week were going to review games, like on a Saturday or on a Friday night or on a Sunday night, although they probably wouldn't get Sunday night on the primetime main broadcast channels, that would be much more reasonable to say, hey, we're just bringing back X-Play, we're not bringing back reruns of the old shows, we're not bringing back Attack of the Show, we're just going to be part of a bigger channel, and that way we only have to succeed in our one show and not succeed in an entire channel's format. Which, honestly, the G4 concept nowadays really is a failed concept. Like, even when I'm watching YouTube videos, I don't watch gaming YouTube videos non-stop. I get bored of them. I watch something different. I bounce around. Anyways, moving on from that rant. That's my opinion. And it really is just 100% of an opinion of first reaction thought. Maybe they'll figure out a way to do it that I have not thought of. We have a game here called Airborne. It's a VR game where you're flying around like a Superman, and then you pull up guns and shoot things. Interesting. $11.69. English only. I need to really evaluate whether I'm keeping VR games on the fall list, because this one kind of deserves to be on the fall list. Like, this is an interesting idea, at least on the face of it. Excuse me as I drink some water. Next we have a game on Steam called Sunset Shapes, which is a 3D puzzle game to get the shadows to line up. Which there might be something there. Kind of depends on how many puzzles there are and how often this would be interesting. 99 cents. How many puzzles are there? Are they handcrafted? 51 handcrafted puzzles for 99 cents. Early access, bunch of languages. It's a stretch on the price for such a small amount of puzzles. Because honestly, I might just burn through that in less than an hour. But I'll put it on the follow list. Every time I come over here and click on something, it says now loading, even though it's not loading anything. Next, we have a game on Steam called Kinoko, which says it's a free-to-play puzzle game. Looks very visually polished for a free-to-play game. Let's see, free. Is it a student project? Short 15-minute relaxing third-person experience. English only. Yes, it is a student project. Okay. Well, I can put it on the wish list because it's a student project. Otherwise, I would just say check this out. It does look like it's a fairly pretty animated, interactive, slightly interactive experience. See. Komatsu has an article here for basically everything, PC and the PS4 and 5 and Xbox One and Series X. Earthlock 2 has been announced as an open world RPG sequel due out in 2022, which we have a very short list of games that have come out and announced themselves to be for 2021 and 2022. Probably because we've long since passed the point where it would make sense to even announce a game in these pandemic times. It's better just to sit on the announcement and wait a year or two, and then you don't have to announce delays because you can just develop the games in secret, or you can perhaps realize that the development is going to just go slower in general, and maybe the games that would have normally been crunched and rushed out to 2022 are actually going to come out in 2024. Here we have a game on Steam called Worm Online, WURM, that's mixed reviewed. Looks like it's a MMO that's not visually polished enough. Looks like it's about 10 years older than it actually is. Well, actually no, because it came out in 2012 apparently, so it is about 10 years old. Free to play, English only. I guess if you had nostalgia for this, you might want to play it, but since I don't, I don't. Next, we have a game on Steam called Darkness Roller Coaster Ultimate Shooter Edition, which looks like it's a VR on-rails shooter, literally on rails. But it's too dark. Yeah. It requires VR. It's $9.99, English full audio. If it wasn't so dark, I would potentially consider it, but yeah, it's just too dark. Although, I would argue that every single game that's an on-rails or like railroad simulator or roller coaster simulator should also have a shooting element. Next we have a game on Steam called The Spoon of Doom, which seems like it's a simple maze game with incremental difficulty. I don't get the Spoon of Doom reference. Feels like they just picked a random name. And it looks like it's just an asset flip game. For $10.19 discounted, English only. There's nothing there special. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article. Echo Generation revealed for Xbox Series X. Which seems like some kind of game. A game where a character walks around with some other kids. And they find a like puppet. Yeah, looks like it's an RPG game with some kind of voxel type images. Tech Raptor was making a reference to Stranger Things, which, yeah, it does feel like it might be slightly like Stranger Things. In the sense that kids are running around and having an adventure. Although, there were other shows that did that before Stranger Things. I would call that closer to a Goonies game, if anything. And that brings me to the Steam blog and the Humble Bundle. So let me look and see if there's any new games bundle. First, we have a Summer Adventure Games bundle that apparently is going to end in 23 hours. I feel like these were games that were already on sale. So, if that games bundle is about done, I imagine some new bundle will come around in a couple days. Yeah, maybe. And then the Steam blog has the top releases of June 2020. See if we can zap that and zap that and zap. Let's see. Gotta get it right. That. And let's see if we can zap one more element. Yeah. There we go. Well, that's about as good as it's going to get, I think. Without me potentially messing it up pretty terribly and losing the whole page. So, Sea of Thieves, Crisis 3, Dragon Age Inquisition, Need for Speed Heat, Command & Conquer Remastered, Satisfactory, Battlefield 5, Journey, Battlefront 2, Persona 4 Golden. None of these are big surprises, although I imagine some people might have never heard of Persona 4 Golden or known it as out. I'm a little surprised Torchlight 3 sold well enough. Griftlands, Desperados 3, Hard Space Shipbreaker, not to be confused with the other game called Shipbreaker. Beyond Two Souls, Detroit, Becoming Human. So even though there was controversies around Quantic Dream, which people have kind of forgotten completely about that now in the sense of Ubisoft, those games sold fine. Outer Wilds, not to be confused with Outer Worlds, Sims 4, which was brought back to Steam, like many of the EA games, Titanfall 2, SpongeBob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottoms. The top free games will be less recognizable: Unfortunate Spaceman, Cyber Hunter, Crafting Idol Clicker, Bombbots Arena, Dragon Hero Rivals, which again is not, I think, available in the West, and yet it still made the top 5 as far as June's top free games. which means if they did translate it into English, it would work rather well. So yeah, there's still commerce going on. Let's see if what would have happened had I zapped that. Yep, that's exactly what I thought would have happened. The whole page would have disappeared. There is commerce going on, certainly, but there's a level of nothing really new. I would make an argument that there is probably some decent free-to-play games that are still coming out fairly commonly. We've yet to see a point where it's just the same free-to-play game every month. A company called Clap Hands, H-A-N-Z, has trademarked a game called Clap Hands Golf in Japan. And a company called Azanage Games has trademarked Worlds in Club. So a couple golf games. There's some very early conversations perhaps being made between Junji Ito, a famous horror manga artist, and Kojima to potentially make a game. And it got blown out of perspective. There's a report that Valve is quietly testing a playtest button where you could request access to playtest games. That's interesting. We may talk more about that on Wednesday. I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed right now and just looking at all the new news that came out. Oh, I also should mention that I went to G4's website that they linked to, and it made you play a game of Pong and win 4 times, so it said G and 4 in the screen, and then it just asked you to type in your password, which again, it just kind of felt like it was just trying to build up hype, or it was just trying to steal people's passwords. So I'm still not 100% sure that this isn't just somebody that has hacked the G4 website. But G4 TV did tweet 32 minutes ago, to paraphrase Morgan, we're glad someone remembered the passwords. 2, you have questions, we maybe have answers. This Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Time, join our VP of Content Partnerships and Brand Development, Blair Herder, for a warehouse-themed AMA. So, Blair Herder still is working, apparently, for G4. Or maybe she just has the license, or he just has the license. I'm not sure if Blair's a girl or not. Yeah. Yeah, he is the husband of Jessica Chobot. So this really may just be Blair Herder and Jessica Chobot getting back together and doing something with G4. And they also seem to have a kid, so it does seem like they are perhaps out of the early youth point of raising kids. The kid, and now they're looking for work. Yeah. Beneath the Steel Sky is now on Steam. Interesting. You need to look at that, because that game is like free. So is it free on Steam? So that would be really weird if it isn't. Naughty Dog is showing off a cosplayer, which Naughty Dog's been fairly quiet, and I don't think they're going to get away with that form of advertisement, particularly after The Last of Us 2, because regardless if you're cosplaying as one of the heroines or the other heroine, neither of which are actually heroines in my opinion, you're going to have some major pushback. They probably should have just let all hype die down and hope that they just got enough sales for The Last of Us. The thing about The Last of Us 2 is they probably did sell as much as they were going to ever sell, regardless of the leaks, regardless of the controversies around it. So yeah, they probably did about as good as they ever were going to do. So yeah. Gamma Sutra says Valve is quietly testing a playtest button on Steam, and it's this image, which, can we open that image in a new tab? Yes, but it's not any bigger. It says join the playtest, request access. That's what it says, if you can read that, but wouldn't be surprised if you can't read it. So now I have to follow little Blair Herder, and we'll see if he has anything new. Yeah, I see Blair Herder's Twitter feed here, and it seems like it seems like this is some kind of Comcast deal that has happened. Or Blair Herder's just gone crazy and he's the one doing this. But the rest of his Twitter feed is just like him being a dad. That's it. It's just Blair Herder being an average person. And that's it. Let's see, I'm trying to figure out how many followers he has. 55,000 followers, so I guess that's a decent number for Twitter. Well, that does bring the mystery into clearer perspective, I think, because it's fairly obvious that either Blair Herder somehow got the rights through Comcast to bring back G4, or Blair Herder has gone insane and he's just totally BSing and saying G4 is coming back and saying that he's working with Comcast, which I put odds at about 50-50 for that one. And that's not in any way a statement against Blair Herder personally. And I think half the people on the planet are approaching a point where they're going insane. Moving on, here's Beneath the Steel Sky, and this is Beneath the Steel Sky, the free game you could download for ScumVM's website. And I played it. I don't think I covered it on my channel. It's a fairly short game, but it's not terrible. And it's free, so the price is right. And almost certainly, this is a game that is being used, still just using the ScumVM emulator. I would say, just to give it a quick review, the concept of very, very rich and successful people being on one high tier of this like giant city in the sky, and then poor people being lower and being more in smog and soot, and then the poorest people potentially being on the ground, is kind of an interesting idea. It doesn't really go anywhere with that concept so much. And I would say in general, that's kind of all the concepts in Beneath the Steel Sky. It throws out some simplistic, by modern standards, like novel sci-fi concepts, but doesn't really do enough like it. It feels very much like it was heavily inspired by what is the movie I'm thinking of? The Tears in the Rain movie. With the robots. Blade Runner, that's it. It feels like it's heavily inspired by Blade Runner, but really only in the aesthetics. And then finally, Huge Games, spelled with 3 U's, has acquired Bowland developer Double Star. I've never heard of Double Star nor Bowland. So, that is that. And with that, that's going to be it for this stream, which, once again, we're in this weird position where I did not win at all on any of the games. Is that a problem, or does Shadowverse serve its need for being something on the screen while I'm talking about video game news? Because that's really what it comes down to at the moment, at least. Once I get some deck rebuilds, once I start opening some packs, I probably should drain this account and just open a whole bunch of packs. And I probably will do that in the next expansion, because the next expansion I think is coming out fairly quickly. And which is kind of a shame, because the current expansion is based on tarot cards, and that's a cool idea, at least. And also, this has been less than two and a half hours, when we plenty of times in Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering Arena took like 4 hours to cover all the news. That being said, that may have a lot more to do with the lack of news than the actual game I was playing at the time. But then there definitely were times when I would also have to spend the rest of the day, 12 to maybe even 16 hours of a day, playing Hearthstone or playing Magic the Gathering Arena to just get those daily victories, which, at least at the moment, the only thing I'm losing by not getting 3 matched wins is 400 temporary gems, at least at the moment, and that seems like that's all you get ever, but I could be wrong about that. Well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching,